You think back to the time when you went to Nashville, and in effect, Nashville didn't take to you and your music.
In 1976 in Nashville was a whole different world environment than what it is today.
There's a moment in Dwight Yoakam's past, blurred by time, that some people say changed the course of his entire life. Most have never even heard of it. But today, we are going to uncover all the secrets and hidden details from his life. Most people know Dwight Yoakam as the sharp-dressed California cowboy with the skinny jeans, the low-tilted hat, and that Bakersfield twang he carried into the 1980s.
Had that moment at 16 years old, and that's what I keep trying to inform what I'm doing.
If we just have the opportunity to take this music back to the people, its original historic audience, which are country music, mainstream country listeners.
He's the guy who made guitars, Cadillacs, blast out of radios from Kentucky to California. But behind the hat and the grin are several stories he rarely talks about. Some of them happened long before he hit the stage lights. Some followed him for decades. And a few of them, according to people close to him, shaped the way he walked, talked, and performed for the rest of his life. So what hidden moments were quietly shaping Dwight Yoakam when the cameras weren't around? Why did he hold on to certain memories and never mention others? And what happened during one late-night phone call in the early 1990s that reportedly changed the way he looked at the business altogether? Today, we're walking through the lesser-known and sometimes heartbreaking details from Dwight Yoakam's life. Some of these stories have been whispered about for years. Some have been confirmed in old interviews, and others still carry a little mystery, even now. Let's start at the beginning, because the first cracks in the story show up much earlier than most folks realize.
The kind of reckless abandon, the kind of just the purity of emotion.
And that's why I use that term with the greatest respect and dignity.
Dwight David Yoakam was born on October 23, 1956 in Pikeville, Kentucky. That's a small town tucked into the eastern part of the state. His family didn't stay long because opportunities were limited, and by the time Dwight was a little kid, the Yoakams had moved up to Columbus, Ohio. They lived on the east side, and he attended Eastmoor High School. Folks who knew him back then remembered him as skinny, polite, and surprisingly serious for a kid. He carried a guitar almost everywhere. One friend from that time told a reporter in the late 1990s, Dwight didn't joke around much. He was focused. But here's the part most fans don't hear. Reportedly, according to some unverified sources, Dwight struggled with feeling out of place. In several interviews, he hinted that the move from Kentucky to Ohio shook him up more than people realized. He once said that leaving home at such a young age gave him a feeling like something got lost on the trip. He didn't describe it in detail, but it sounded like he carried that feeling for years. By the time he was in high school, Dwight showed two sides. On one hand, he had a sharp sense of humor and performed in school plays, including a 1973 production of Charlie Brown. On the other hand, several classmates said he spent long stretches alone, sitting with a notebook or strumming quietly in a corner of the lunchroom. It is rumored that one of those classmates told an Ohio paper many years later that Dwight seemed to be listening to things nobody else could hear.
I didn't realize then that just wasn't the nature of Nashville.
I don't know why you would listen, and hopefully it's because it's honest.
After he graduated in 1974, he attended Ohio State University for a short time. He didn't stay long. Something kept pulling him west. So in 1977, at only 20 years old, he loaded his belongings into his car and drove to Los Angeles. He didn't know anyone there, and the scene at the time wasn't welcoming to country musicians. It was the era of punk clubs on Santa Monica Boulevard and new wave bands popping up every week. According to Dwight, when he walked into certain bars with a guitar case, folks looked at him like he'd taken a wrong turn. But he didn't back down. He started performing anywhere he could. Small rooms, coffee shops, backyard parties, even parking lots behind clubs that wouldn't book him. Rumor has it he once played for only 3 people at a late-night show near Hollywood Boulevard in 1978, One of those three reportedly told him afterward, "Man, you sing like you've got something to get off your chest." Dwight just nodded. Those early years in LA were not glamorous. He slept on couches. He lived in cramped places with barely any furniture. One friend remembered a tiny apartment Dwight shared with two other young musicians around 1979. Reportedly, according to that friend, the kitchen sink leaked constantly, and Dwight kept his stage boots on top of the refrigerator because there wasn't anywhere else to put them. Dwight laughed about it later, saying that was luxury compared to some of the other places. Around this time, he met Pete Anderson, the guitarist who would become his musical partner for more than a decade. Their first meeting happened sometime around late 1981, reportedly at a rehearsal space in North Hollywood. Dwight remembered the moment clearly in a 2019 interview. He said, "Pete played one lick, and I thought this could work." But what he didn't say was how rough things were behind the scenes. According to one person who knew both men, Dwight was dealing with a quiet but constant anxiety during those years. Nothing dramatic, just the heavy pressure of trying to prove himself in a city that didn't want his sound yet. Things changed quickly in 1984 when Dwight recorded a 6-song EP called A Town South of Bakersfield. It caught the attention of some local radio folks, including KCSN in Southern California. The following year, in 1985, he recorded his first full album, Guitars, Cadillacs, etc., etc. It was released in 1986 and became a breakthrough. Suddenly, the guy who couldn't get booked in LA clubs was on national radio, landing on the Billboard charts and being talked about by traditional country fans who loved his sound. But with that success came a few difficult moments that rarely get mentioned. One of the earliest happened in the spring of 1986 during his first big tour. According to crew members, the schedule was brutal. Some nights they played small venues. Some nights they'd open for bigger acts, and some nights they'd drive hundreds of miles only to reach a place with no real backstage area. One night in particular, reportedly in northern Arizona, Dwight finished a show and walked off stage looking pale. Crew members said he seemed exhausted and overwhelmed. He didn't talk about what happened, but the people who were there said he sat quietly in the back of the bus for almost an hour. One person later described him as carrying too much pressure for one guy. His rise continued through the late 1980s with hits like Honky-Tonk Man, Please Please Baby, and Little Ways. His 1987 album Hillbilly Deluxe reached platinum. His 1988 album Buenas Noches from a Lonely Room included Streets of Bakersfield, the duet with Buck Owens that fans still consider one of the defining songs of his career. But even during these peak years, Dwight dealt with several personal struggles that stayed out of the spotlight. One of the hardest came in early 1989. According to people close to him, Dwight received a late-night call about someone from his past who had been going through a difficult time. He never said publicly what the call involved, and the exact details remain unclear. But in a 2007 interview, Dwight hinted at the emotional weight of that moment. He said, "Life sends you things when you least expect it. Sometimes all you can do is sit still and listen." Fans didn't know it then, but folks around him said that call stayed with him for years. They said Dwight grew more guarded after that night, more protective of his time and his circle. Then came the 1990s, which brought both triumphs and heartbreak. On the triumph side, Dwight became a crossover star. He appeared in several films, starting with Red Rock West in 1993 and Sling Blade in 1996. Directors loved his focus. Billy Bob Thornton once said, "Dwight shows up ready. He doesn't waste a second." But even while his acting career grew, some friendships in the music world grew strained. One of the most talked about was his falling out with Buck Owens. The two had made magic together on Streets of Bakersfield, earning a #1 hit in 1988. Buck was a father figure to Dwight, at least for a while, but according to multiple sources, something happened around the mid-1990s that created tension. The details are fuzzy because both men avoided talking about it. In a 2006 interview, Dwight only said, "Buck was stubborn, and so am I." We had a moment where we didn't agree. There was also chatter about a business issue, possibly related to a creative decision during a joint appearance, but nobody ever confirmed it. When Buck passed in 2006, Dwight reportedly called several friends and talked about regret. One of them said Dwight felt like something had been left unfinished. Around this same time, Dwight had another major blow when his longtime musical partner, Pete Anderson, stepped away from their collaboration in the early 2000s. They had worked together for nearly 2 decades. According to interviews from that period, the split was caused by creative differences. Pete said it came down to different paths. Dwight stayed quiet on the specifics, only saying it was time. But insiders said it wasn't an easy separation. They had weathered countless long nights, long drives, and long tours together. Losing that partnership reportedly hit Dwight harder than he ever admitted publicly. Dwight also faced several tough moments involving his personal relationships. From the late 1990s through the early 2000s, he was linked to a few well-known names, including a long relationship with actress Sharon Stone, which reportedly began around 1992. The two were seen at several events together, including the 1993 premiere of Tombstone. But people close to Dwight said he struggled with the attention. One friend said Dwight felt boxed in by the gossip. Sharon herself hinted in a later interview that Dwight preferred privacy and didn't like being pulled into Hollywood's spotlight. When the relationship eventually faded, sources said it left Dwight feeling more cautious about letting people in. Another moment that rarely gets talked about happened in 2005. Dwight was preparing for a new album, and according to folks close to him, he quietly stepped away from the public eye for several weeks. Nobody explained why. A person who worked with him at the time said Dwight wanted quiet, not noise. Some fans assumed he was taking time for writing. Other sources said he was processing several personal matters at once, including the loss of Buck Owens and the breakup with Pete Anderson. Whatever the reason, those who saw Dwight later that year said he looked more serious than usual. In 2011, Dwight surprised fans by stepping back from releasing new music for a period. He focused instead on film and television work, and he took on several behind-the-scenes roles. Part of the reason, according to industry insiders, was that Dwight felt frustrated with the changing landscape of country music. He said it politely in interviews, but folks who knew him heard the deeper tone. One person told a Nashville paper, Dwight didn't like where things were going. He felt like the stuff he grew up with was being pushed aside. That frustration grew even stronger after a private conversation with a record executive in 2012. According to someone who was there, the executive made a comment about Dwight's style being too traditional for the new crop. Dwight reportedly thanked the man, walked out calmly, and never worked with that label again. Then something brighter happened. In early 2013, Dwight met Emily Joyce, a photographer from California. The two grew close quickly, and friends said Dwight seemed calmer around her. They shared similar tastes and similar dry humor. Dwight didn't rush into anything. They reportedly dated for nearly a decade before marrying quietly in March 2020. The ceremony took place at a small location in Santa Monica with only a handful of people present. In a rare personal statement afterward, Dwight said, "We wanted something simple." People close to him said it was the happiest they'd seen him in years. But behind that joy was another chapter filled with heavy memories from earlier in his life. One of those memories came from his childhood. In a 2016 interview with an Ohio magazine, Dwight briefly mentioned experiencing a long stretch of loneliness in his early teens. He didn't explain what caused it, but people who knew him in Columbus said his family went through a challenging period during the early 1970s. Some speculated it involved personal struggles within the family, but Dwight never confirmed any details. He only said that music helped him find a room where everything felt steady. Another moment that weighed on him happened during a recording session sometime around 1998. According to a musician who was there, Dwight arrived at the studio early carrying a small notebook filled with handwritten lyrics. The musician said Dwight looked tired and quiet. During a break, he reportedly said, "Some days the songs are the only things that sit still." The musician didn't press him for details, but years later, he said he believed Dwight was going through something heavy at the time. Similar quiet moments happened during tours. On the 2004 tour cycle, a crew member recalled Dwight sitting alone on the edge of the stage after a sound check in Tulsa. Nobody approached him. He was staring out at the empty seats. When he finally stood up, he reportedly said, "A lot of ghosts in these places." He wasn't referring to anything supernatural. Crew members believed he was talking about memories, the good, the bad, and the ones that follow a performer from town to town. Dwight also had a few hidden health scares over the years, nothing that caused major headlines, but enough to worry folks around him. One incident reportedly took place during a show in Portland in the mid-2000s. According to someone in the venue crew, Dwight looked unsteady for a moment between songs. He finished the set without missing a beat, but afterward he reportedly asked for a few minutes alone in his dressing room. A stagehand said he walked in slow, like something was bothering him. Dwight later brushed it off in interviews, claiming he had been tired, but those close to him remembered it differently. They said it rattled him. There was also an emotional moment in 2017 when Dwight returned to Eastern Kentucky for a special appearance. According to witnesses, he seemed deeply moved during a drive near Pike County, where he'd been born. One local reporter said Dwight grew quiet as they passed the old mining areas. He told the reporter, "A lot started here, more than folks know." The reporter didn't push for details, but people nearby said Dwight looked like he was remembering something heavy. Then there's the story of the unreleased songs. Industry insiders say Dwight has a collection of handwritten lyrics that he's never recorded. Some date back to the early 1980s. Some were written during long nights on the road. According to one person who saw the notebooks, at least a few of those songs were written after private heartbreaks Dwight never mentioned publicly. One line, reportedly from a song written in 1994, simply read, "Some roads don't circle back." Dwight never revealed who or what that was about. Another lesser-known chapter involves a house fire. In the early 1990s, Dwight owned a home in Los Angeles that reportedly had a small fire in one of the back rooms. It wasn't serious and nobody was hurt, but the incident left Dwight shaken. According to someone who helped with the repairs, several personal items were damaged, including a collection of photos from his early years in Ohio. Dwight reportedly said those were the only copies. After that, he started storing keepsakes in safer places and became more protective about his belongings. Now, one story that longtime fans whisper about happened around 1991. According to several people close to him, Dwight received another late-night call from someone he hadn't spoken to in years. The caller was going through a difficult time and wanted to reconnect. The two talked for a while. Dwight reportedly listened quietly and tried to offer support, but the next morning, he heard that the situation had taken an unfortunate turn. The details remain private and delicate, and Dwight has never spoken about it publicly. Friends said that call left a deep mark on him, and for a long time afterward, he would go quiet whenever someone brought up old relationships from his past. That wasn't the only emotional blow around that time. In 1992, Dwight lost a close family friend who had been part of his childhood. It wasn't publicly announced. But in a 2003 interview, Dwight mentioned losing someone important during a busy year. He didn't give a name. People close to him said this loss affected him deeply because it reminded him of his Kentucky roots and the people who had shaped him before fame. Even during the biggest moments of his career, the shadows of these experiences showed up in subtle ways. For example, during the filming of Sling Blade in 1996, Dwight reportedly kept mostly to himself between scenes. Billy Bob Thornton said in an interview, Dwight had a lot on his mind. You could tell he was thinking about something far away. Another member of the crew remembered Dwight sitting quietly near a fence on the set one afternoon, scribbling something on a small notepad. When someone asked if he was writing a song, Dwight just smiled softly and changed the subject. As the years went on, Dwight carried all these hidden moments with him, but he also found ways to keep moving forward. In 2016, he released Swimming Pools, Movie Stars, a bluegrass project that returned him to the sounds of his Kentucky childhood. In interviews, he said he wanted to go back to the beginning. People close to him believe the project helped him work through several old memories, especially ones connected to his teenage years in Columbus. And then, in 2020, right as the world was shutting down, Dwight and Emily welcomed their first child. He was 63 at the time. According to friends, the new chapter softened him. He took long walks with the baby. He talked about wanting to show him the places that shaped him, from Pikeville to Columbus to Los Angeles. But even with all this joy, the quieter stories remain part of Dwight's life. Stories about long drives through desert highways, about backstage moments where he sat quietly and stared at the floor, about phone calls that carried heavy news, and about friendships that ended with more questions than answers. These moments didn't make headlines, but they shaped the man behind the hat. If you look closely at Dwight's career, you notice a pattern. He always keeps moving, but he never forgets where he started. The early loneliness, the family struggles, the tough nights in Los Angeles, the strained relationships, the private losses, each one left a mark. And while he rarely talks about them, they live in the breaks between his lyrics, in the slow bend of a guitar note, and in the quiet expression he sometimes carries during interviews. So the next time you listen to 1,000 Miles from Nowhere or Ain't That Lonely Yet, you might hear more than a catchy melody. You might hear the weight of those hidden years, the stories he keeps tucked under that iconic hat, and the memories he continues to guard even today. Thank you for watching. Which of these moments surprised you the most? And which hidden chapter from another country artist should we cover next? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe for more stories from behind the music.